Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast, and welcome to your AEW Dynamite post show. And man, there is a lot to talk about in today's episode. A lot of things happened last night on Dynamite, story progression with this makeshift tournament. We're going to get into all of that on today's episode. And again, if you guys are new here, man, again, follow Spotify, go over to YouTube, type in Stay Classic with Mr. Classic, man. Go over there, subscribe, follow, turn on the notification bell, man. It would mean a lot to me. But again, like I said, there was a lot of stuff that happened last night on Dynamite, and we're going to get into all that on today's episode. So let's start off with the first match of the night, man. We got the Death Riders taking on the Don Callis family. The match itself, I thought, was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between the Death Riders and the Don Callis family. We had Daniel Garcia and Josh Alexander both exchange in the middle of the ring, followed by Moxley and Takeshita both exchanging in the middle of the ring as well. The Death Riders were keeping the pace of the match, but El Clone hits a springboard moonsault, followed by Takeshita hitting an exploder suplex in the middle of the ring. Moxley then hits a cutter on El Clone in the middle of the ring, but Garcia applies a Dragon Slayer in the middle of the ring. Moxley then hits a foot stomp for a near fall. Takeshita then hits a Blue Thunder Bomb in the middle of the ring for a near fall as well. Takeshita then hits a running knee, but Takeshita ultimately hits his signature Raging Fire in the middle of the ring, pins for the 3. And your winners of the match are the Don Callis family. Hats off to the Don Callis family for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have a mixed tag team matchup. It is Orange Cassidy teaming up with Tony Storm to take on some jobbers. This was a glorified squash match with Orange Cassidy and Tony Storm keeping the pace of the match. Tony Storm hits a hip attack in the middle of the ring, followed by Orange Cassidy hitting an orange punch, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Orange Cassidy and Tony Storm. After the match, Orange Cassidy and Tony Storm grab a microphone. Orange Cassidy says that their matchup at Grand Slam might have been a mistake, and they might not be prepared for this matchup. The matchup that they're going to have is at Grand Slam, where Tony Storm and Orange Cassidy will take on Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir, and where the loser of that match will have to get their hair cut. Tony Storm then makes her claim on the match, stating that maybe they are unprepared for the match, and says that her hair is everything. But Tony says that she's going to make Marina look like Moxley, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Adam Page taking on Mark Davis from the Don Callis family. I thought it was an okay match. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Page and Davis, with Page keeping the pace of the match. Page and Davis then both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Page hitting a moonsault off the railing on the outside. Page then gets Davis in the middle of the ring. Page hits another moonsault off the top on Davis for a near fall. Davis then tries to get some offense in by hitting an enziguri, followed by a lariat on Adam Page. Page then gets up, hits a deadeye on Mark Davis for a near fall, followed by Page hitting a devastating tombstone pile driver on Davis onto the ramp. Page then hits his signature buckshot lariat on Mark Davis, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Adam Page. After the match, Page grabs a microphone. He talks about Grand Slam. Page also says that he hopes to see Kenny at Grand Slam. And Page also sends a chilling warning to MJF. And speaking of Kenny Omega, we go into our next match of the night. It's a highly anticipated matchup. It is Kenny Omega taking on Andrade, finally. The match itself, this was a great match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Omega and Andrade, with Omega and Andrade both exchanging in the middle of the ring. Omega then hits a V-trigger on Andrade in the middle of the ring, but Andrade hits a suplex on Omega on the outside. Omega and Andrade both get in the middle of the ring. Omega hits a superplex off the top rope on Andrade for a near fall. Omega then follows this up by a moonsault on Andrade for a near fall as well. Andrade then gets up, tries to get some offense in. He hits a flying forearm on Omega, followed by a 3 Amigos, paying homage to the late, great Eddie Guerrero. Andrade was trying to keep the pace of the match, with Andrade applying a figure 4 leg lock on Omega in the middle of the ring, but the hold is broken. Omega and Andrade both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Omega hitting 2 Snapdragon suplexes on Andrade, followed by Omega hitting a V-trigger as well. Andrade gets up, hits a DDT on Omega for a near fall, followed by Andrade hitting a running knee for a near fall as well. Omega gets up, hits a running knee of his own, landing on Andrade, but Andrade gets up, hits a spinning back elbow, landing on Omega. After this, Don Callis then gives Andrade the screwdriver. Swerve then comes out of nowhere, grabs the screwdriver from Andrade, but Andrade hits a low blow on Omega with the referee being distracted. This allowed Andrade to hit the finish on Omega, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match, and moving on to face Adam Page at Grand Slam for the number 1 contendership for the AEW World title is Andrade. After the match, you can see Swerve in the ring, disappointed with himself. Omega then comes up to talk to Swerve, but Omega then starts yelling at Swerve. Omega and Swerve start pushing each other in the middle of the ring. AEW security come out to the ring to break up Kenny Omega and Swerve Strickland. So it looks like we have some unfinished business here between the likes of Kenny Omega and Swerve Strickland. Moving on from that, we have a AEW Women's Tag Team title eliminator matchup. That is Penelope Ford teaming up with Megan Bayne to take on the Babes of Wrath. I thought it was a good match. It was a back-and-forth matchup between both teams, with Willow hitting an enziguri in the middle of the ring. Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford were keeping the pace of the match, with Ford hitting a blockbuster on the Babes of Wrath. After that, Bayne and Ford hit a blockbuster on the Babes of Wrath, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match, and moving on, I should say, to face the Babes of Wrath for the AEW Women's Tag Team titles are Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne. Hats off to Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have an AEW National Championship matchup where it is Ricochet defending the AEW National title against Jungle Boy Jack Perry. The match itself, I thought, was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Perry and Ricochet, with Perry hitting a senton off the ramp, taking out Ricochet on the outside. Perry and Ricochet then get in the middle of the ring, with Perry quickly hitting a spear on Ricochet in the middle of the ring. Perry then was trying to keep the pace of the match. Perry and Ricochet then both exchange in the middle of the ring, but Ricochet ends up sending Perry onto the announce table. Ricochet follows that up by hitting a Death Valley driver on Perry on the outside. Ricochet then grabs the AEW National title, but Perry hits a Poison Rana on Ricochet in the middle of the ring. Perry then follows it up by hitting a cutter on Ricochet for a near fall. Perry then applies a snare trap in the middle of the ring, but the Gates of Agony are here. Ricochet is still in the snare trap submission, but the Gates of Agony end up helping Ricochet. The Young Bucks then come out of nowhere. They attack the Gates of Agony, but Ricochet then sends Perry into the AEW National title that was pretty much hanged up on the corner of the ring post. This allowed Ricochet to hit his signature Vertigo on Jack Perry, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match, and still AEW National Champion, is Ricochet. Hats off to Ricochet for getting the win in this matchup. And moving on from that, we go into our main event of the evening. It is MJF taking on Brody King in an AEW title eliminator matchup. Before the match even gets started, Adam Page is here. This causes a distraction from MJF. Brody King capitalizes on this by choking MJF pretty much lifeless. King then hits a senton on MJF, followed by Brody King hitting the finish on MJF in the middle of the ring, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Brody King. After the match, Andrade comes out to the ring. He attacks Brody King. Andrade then attacks MJF. Page then hits a buckshot lariat on Andrade. Page then goes for another buckshot lariat on MJF, but he hits a low blow on Adam Page instead. Looks like Page has some unfinished business with MJF. Couple of things I want to talk about with you guys, man, when it pertains to AEW Dynamite before I get the hell up out of here. Number one, man, this was a solid show. The past 2 weeks of AEW Dynamite television that we've gotten, I can't really complain entirely. We've had storyline progression with this makeshift tournament that Tony Khan and AEW has created for the AEW World title, with the names of Kenny Omega, Andrade, Adam Page, Swerve Strickland. Originally Samoa Joe, but Joe sustained an injury and he was out due to injury. So we had this little makeshift tournament to pretty much crown a new number 1 contender to MJF's AEW World title. Now, while there is some upside to this, and I'm a fan of these makeshift tournaments that AEW seemingly likes to create, sometimes out of thin air, or sometimes, like the Continental Classic Tournament or the Owen Hart Cup, which are great tournaments for AEW. With that being said, though, I do have some gripes with this makeshift tournament, most notably Adam Page. Adam Page was pretty much somewhat announced for this makeshift tournament to crown a new number 1 contender. Now, the reason why I have gripes with this, most specifically with Adam Page, is that Adam Page, yes, he had a match with Mark Davis, which I'll get into in a second. He hasn't really had matches against Kenny Omega, Swerve Strickland, or Andrade during this entire makeshift tournament that's happened now for the past 2 weeks. That was announced seemingly from AEW. Now, a lot of people are going to point to the direction on the fact that Page was supposed to face Samoa Joe, but Joe sustained an injury, and he's out with a lengthy time, I'm assuming, undisclosed time. So they scrapped that match. But I don't understand how Page, because he didn't face Samoa Joe, Page automatically got fast-tracked to the finals that would take place at Grand Slam, which is now going to be between Adam Page and Andrade, where the winner of that match will then face MJF for the AEW World title at Revolution, which is AEW's next pay-per-view. The reason why I have issues with this is because, like I said, Adam Page hasn't faced the likes of Andrade, Swerve, or Kenny Omega during this makeshift tournament that we've seen for the past 2 weeks. Also, Brody King. Brody King was a wild card into this whole situation with MJF. The reason why Brody King falls into this as far as Adam Page is concerned, because in my belief, I think it was 2 weeks ago where we had Brody King come out to the ring and tell MJF that he's coming after MJF in his AEW World title. Okay, fine. Brody King deserves to be in the main event spot. But the whole stickler with that is that MJF had told Brody King that he hasn't done a damn thing to earn the opportunity at his AEW World title. He hasn't, competed against top challengers or top competitors and had successful wins to grant him an opportunity at the AEW World title. And then we get to this match that was pretty much made out of thin air from Brody King having a conversation with Tony Khan backstage, where Tony Khan granted Brody King an opportunity at MJF in this AEW title eliminator, where seemingly Brody King pretty much squashed MJF in under 3 minutes. I understand why they did it. I understand trying to make Brody King a suitable competitor or challenger to MJF's AEW World title. What I don't understand is that if Brody King wanted a title opportunity that was seemingly already announced after MJF beat Bandito, and we saw Brody King come out and kind of challenge MJF, or was pissed off on the fact of what MJF did to Bandito, why was it not a situation where we would see Brody King replace Samoa Joe in this makeshift tournament, have Brody King face off against Adam Page, where if Brody King was somehow successful in beating Adam Page, it would have made Brody King more of a solid competitor or a solid challenger to MJF's AEW World title. Instead, we had Brody King squash MJF in 3 minutes, and some people will say, well, isn't that enough? I don't think so. I don't think it's enough for Adam Page, and I don't think it's enough for Brody King. Knowing that we have this tournament where Andrade's already competed twice now against the likes of 2 former AEW World Champions in Kenny Omega and former AEW World Champion in Swerve Strickland. That's my problem with that. That's my gripe with that tournament. You could have easily replaced Brody King or Samoa Joe and slotted in Brody King to replace Samoa Joe, and you could have had a match between Brody King taking on Adam Page, where if King was successful, not only would it be a big win for Brody King, it would also be a big win in the factor of Brody King beating a former AEW World Champion in Adam Page. You know what I'm saying? Rather than, okay, we're gonna fast track him to a matchup between Brody King and MJF, a title eliminator matchup where he seemingly squashed MJF in under 3 minutes, and now they're going to run it back because it was a title eliminator, and now at Grand Slam it's going to be Brody King versus MJF for the AEW World title, where I also think, you made Brody King look strong in squashing MJF last night in under 3 minutes. I don't really see MJF dropping the title to Brody King at Grand Slam. I just don't. And credit, I'm a fan of Brody King, but the issue that I have with Brody King is that, he deserves to be in the main event spot. But I had to go along with what MJF said. I mean, Brody King really hasn't done a whole hell of a lot to really grant himself an opportunity at the AEW World title. And nonetheless, majority of Brody King's career in the confines of AEW, he's either been in tag teams or stables. If you guys go back as far as I do with AEW, you got to remember that he was also a member of the House of Black, where it was Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, Brody King himself, as well as Julia Hart. And then after Malachi Black left, seemingly we had the disassemble of the House of Black. Julia Hart went on to do her own thing. And then obviously Malachi Black went back to WWE as Aleister Black. So seemingly the House of Black was no more. And then after the House of Black was no more, then we get the Hounds of Hell, where it was Brody King tag team partner with Buddy Matthews until Matthews sustained an injury over in Australia, which was, I think, roughly about a year ago. So after that happened, then we had Brody King then teaming up with Bandito, which was successful because eventually both Brody King and Bandito became AEW tag team champions. I thought it was a great makeshift tag team that AEW put together. So in hindsight, Brody King really hasn't had a singles run, or a solid single run for that matter, in AEW. Majority of the time that Brody King has had singles runs, he's had more losses, I think, than wins. So I understand where MJF is coming from in the concept that Brody King really hasn't had a lot of suitable wins to really grant himself an opportunity at the AEW World title. With that being said, though, I'm also not a huge fan of these AEW title eliminator matches. I think, honestly, they're a joke. I think that's the biggest bullshit in AEW. And honestly, I think it's lazy, half-ass booking, to be honest with you. I think it makes no sense. It doesn't do anybody any justice at all. We had 2 title eliminator matches last night, where we had the Babes of Wrath taking on Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne, and then obviously the main event between Brody King and MJF in an AEW title eliminator match as well. I'm going to be honest. Number one, both the champions respectfully lost. MJF lost, and we had the Babes of Wrath, who also lost to Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. And because they had lost, now at Grand Slam, you're going to see the likes of Brody King once again challenging MJF for the AEW World title, and we're going to see the Babes of Wrath defend the women's tag team titles against Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford, after Ford and Bayne beat the Babes of Wrath last night in the women's tag team title eliminator matchup. It doesn't do the champions any justice. We already saw you take a loss. And now we're getting a tag team match, or a title match now, because they beat you, and now we're going to get, respectfully, we're going to get that title opportunity now because they beat the champions. Me personally, I like the concept of a company building a number one contender. To be honest with you, making a strong impact for that individual or that tag team to be the new number one contenders. Have them have solid wins, build up story, and build up recognition within the company, and validation on the fact that they've had solid wins to get them an opportunity at these respected titles, rather than them going and beating the champion, and then we're going to run it back again at the next pay-per-view or next Dynamite episode or next PLE. To me, I think that's a crock of shit. To be honest with you, I think that's the biggest bullshit ever. You know, I've never been a big fan of these title eliminator matches. I think it makes the champions look like shit, to be honest with you. So that was one of my gripes with last night. My other gripe is Ricochet. I'm going to be honest, man. Ricochet, I don't understand the AEW national title. It already had, the title has no lineage, it's got no history, and the title seemingly means jack shit. The whole mantra around this title was that this person, whoever held the AEW National Championship, was going to be defending this title all over the world, over in CMLL in Mexico, over in Japan, on the Indies. That really hasn't happened. And if you guys go back as far as I do with AEW, it's the same mantra from the AEW National Championship when it was announced, and Orange Cassidy was the AEW National Championship. I mean, hell, Orange Cassidy already was pissed off alone when he was AEW National Champion and not actually defending the title when they went over to England for the first time. I remember that distinctly because Orange Cassidy was talking about that at AEW's post-show. So the AEW National title means jack shit. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it gives Jack Perry something, it gets to showcase him on television. The only reason why Jack Perry is having these matches with Ricochet is solely due to the fact that Luchasaurus is out with injury. If Luchasaurus was not out with injury, there would be no Jack Perry and Ricochet. There might be the Gates of Agony versus Jurassic Express, sure. But the whole thing with them reuniting was to put Jack Perry and Luchasaurus back in the conversation for the AEW tag team titles. But unfortunately, Luchasaurus sustained an injury from the Gates of Agony. So now they're having Jack Perry facing off against Ricochet for the AEW national title because of what happened to Luchasaurus. But at the end of the day, I can give a shit less about that AEW national title. I think that title is a complete and utter joke. There's so many goddamn titles with this company, it's unreal. It's absolutely unreal, bro. And Ricochet, as far as I'm concerned with Ricochet, and this might be a hot take for a lot of people, but in my honest opinion, I think the best part of Ricochet's in-ring career that he has done so far as a professional wrestler is his time in NXT, when it was NXT Black and Gold, and when he was working on the indies, and most notably Lucha Underground, when he was Prince Puma. That was the best part of Ricochet's career. His main roster career in WWE was absolutely dog shit. Absolutely dog shit. And I'm not sitting here saying that his career has gotten a lot better over in AEW. It hasn't. They put the title on Ricochet because they had no other choice. Tony Khan wanted to give him a title to make him kind of relevant within the confines of AEW. That title means jack shit. Honestly. And not for nothing, it's not the title that makes the superstar. It's the superstar that makes the title, which I'll get into in a second. But as far as Ricochet is concerned, bro, I mean, you see him on the on Twitter, and he's talking all this bullshit. He needs to pump his brakes, bro. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. And not for nothing, I don't see Ricochet as a main eventer. I just don't. Mid-card at best. I'm sorry. Ricochet, at one time, I had a lot of high praise for Ricochet, a lot of high hopes for Ricochet, especially when he was in NXT. But ever since he got called up to the main roster, bro, his career has fallen flat on its ass. I'm sorry. And to be honest with you, I don't think any fan genuinely gives a rat's ass about that AEW National Championship, to be honest with you. The other things, though, that were a plus about last night, there was a vignette that was played during AEW Dynamite last night about Will Ospreay. Now, what I do know about Will Ospreay's situation, obviously he, taking some time off, he's dealing with injury, he had to have neck surgery to repair his neck. But what I do know as far as the progress with Ospreay is that I know Ospreay was at AEW a couple weeks ago when AEW, I think, were in Orlando, Florida. And Will Ospreay was backstage. He was getting checked out by AEW's medical team. And it does seem as if Will Ospreay will be coming back here relatively soon. I know a lot of people are pointing towards the direction of Ospreay returning sometime in the spring, maybe in March, maybe mid to late April, right before we get into a couple months before we get into All In. I know AEW and Tony Khan are really hard pressed on trying to have Will Ospreay at this year's All In for probably multiple reasons. They're going back to London. Last year, All In was in Texas. And most notably, I believe that it might be Will Ospreay's time to become AEW World Champion. And that we'll crown him as the new AEW World Champion in London at All In this year. So they played this vignette. It showed the fact that he was getting checked out by doctors. He was getting ready for surgery. He was talking about how he felt being an AEW superstar and what it means to him and what it feels like to be an AEW superstar. And I thought it was a really cool video package they put together. And I hope a speedy recovery for Ospreay, man. He's sorely missed. I'm excited to see him step back into the AEW ring and see what he can do. And hopefully he comes back with a clear bill of health and he's ready to compete once again in the confines of AEW. We also had Statlander last night. Looks like she's going to have another match with Tekla, where Statlander is going to pick the stipulation for that match that she will have once again with Tekla for the AEW Women's Championship. And it looks like it's probably going to be a pretty interesting stipulation. She didn't really announce the stipulation last night. It looks like we'll have that stipulation on this Saturday's Collision, where she will pick the stipulation for her match against Tekla. Like I said, they had the Babes of Wrath versus Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. Thought it was a decent match. Andrade versus Kenny Omega, solid matchup as well. And like I said, man, AEW, for the past 2 weeks, it has not been a bad show. We've gotten some storyline progression here with this makeshift tournament to crown a new number one contender to MJF's world title. So there is some intrigue with that, for sure. And again, I mean, if AEW continues to keep doing this, things will slowly start to get better. The other things I want to talk about too, some other news about AEW. It does seem as if there is a AEW talent that is going to be making her way back possibly to AEW television. And it was rumor and speculation that Tony Khan had talked about bringing back Britt Baker back to AEW television. Tony Khan was doing an interview with another podcast here, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, where he was asked about Britt Baker, and Tony Khan himself had said that he is very interested in bringing back Britt Baker back to AEW television, which I think is very interesting because we have not seen Britt Baker in quite some time, ever since the falling out between Baker and Tony Khan. The other thing that I also found out is that Tony Khan is not done with hiring talent. It was also announced last night that AEW and Tony Khan are looking to bring in more talent. They've already signed talent, from what I understand, that's still yet to be announced, but they're also looking to add even more additions to the AEW roster, and most notably additions to the female roster on AEW. So when this was announced, there was a couple of things that kind of ran through my head. Number one, obviously people are going to be excited for new additions to AEW. I think the biggest downside in this, though, is the fact that how much talent are we going to be hiring here to AEW? We just hired the Rascals. We hired Persephone from CMLL on a dual contract. We also hired Mascara Dorada on a dual contract where he can also work at CMLL as well as AEW. They just hired the Rascals. And they also just recently hired former NXT World Champion and former Tag Team Champion in Tommaso Ciampa. So it looks like Tony Khan is going to continue to keep hiring talent. There's also rumors and speculation that AEW and Tony Khan are also in talks with New Japan to bring in David Finlay from New Japan on a dual contract as well, where Finlay will be able to be working with AEW as well as be also working with New Japan Pro Wrestling. So obviously Tony Khan is on this whole deal about acquiring talent, man. He's been, hiring a lot of talent as of late. A lot of notable talent. And there are some still free agents out there. Dakota Kai, Shayna Baszler. I don't know if she's still working with NXT yet or not. Killer Kelly, former TNA talent, is also now a free agent as well. So I don't know if Tony Khan is going to be bringing these ladies into AEW. For me personally, I'm all for them bringing in new talent if they actually utilize the talent correctly and actually put them on television, which is, it's honestly a pain in the ass in itself, because when it pertains to AEW television, AEW only has roughly about a 4-hour block of television time every week, whether it's Dynamite for 2 hours, and I believe Collision is also 2 hours. So when this was announced yesterday that they're still acquiring more talent and they already signed more talent that's still yet to be announced, my initial thought process is, how in the hell are we going to start showcasing these talents that you are still trying to acquire to come into AEW when you only roughly have a 4-hour time block every single week from Dynamite and Collision? Unless there's something I don't know, and maybe Ring of Honor got a TV rights deal, or maybe they filed a new trademark to possibly have a third show under the AEW banner. Maybe they're working with Fox. Maybe, I don't know. I just, to me, it's you're adding all this talent, but you only have a 4-hour time block every single week between Dynamite and Collision. And yeah, you have Ring of Honor, but Ring of Honor is also behind a paywall. So, you can still add a shitload of talent to Ring of Honor. But to me, it's just like, bro, you're hiring a shitload of talent. And there's also other talent out there as well. You have Scarlett and Karrion Kross, who, again, are technically free agents. You also have possibly one of the biggest free agents out there if he decides to continue wrestling, with AJ Styles. Now, obviously, if AJ Styles is willing to wrestle, and maybe he's pulling a ruse on WWE saying that he's done wrestling and maybe he's bullshitting them, obviously Tony Khan is going to give AJ Styles whatever the hell he wants, and rightfully so. Because I'm going to tell you right now, bro, if AJ Styles somehow walks through the doors of AEW, it is one of the biggest acquisitions that AEW has gotten to date. That's a huge signing for AEW. And not for nothing, when it pertains to AJ Styles, I've told you guys this. If AJ Styles comes into AEW, bro, there is endless amount of matches that could be 5-star bangers if AJ Styles decides to walk through the doors of AEW and work with AEW and Tony Khan. We're talking Styles Omega, Styles Obviously, Will Ospreay, Styles, Adam Page, Styles, Swerve Strickland, Styles, and Samoa Joe, and the history they have just from their TNA days. Styles and MJF. I mean, there's an abundance of matches. Styles and Takeshita. I mean, there's a shitload of matches that Styles could have if Styles really wanted a retirement tour and do it his way. And I'm sure Tony Khan would be paying him a shitload of money, even if it was a 6-month deal. Absolutely. Because there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on AEW if AJ Styles walks through the doors of AEW. But I believe Styles' contract officially ends with WWE at the end of February. So there's a very good chance that we could maybe, just maybe, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not. But there could be a chance that we could see AJ Styles showing up in AEW at Revolution. When they're out in Revolution. I believe Revolution's over in LA around early March. So this will be right around the time where technically if he doesn't re-sign a contract with WWE, his contract would be up. I think his contract with WWE is up at the end of February. So, we get in the first week of March, we could possibly see AJ Styles at Revolution for AEW. I'm not saying it's going to happen. All I'm saying, it's a possibility. And according to MJF, and the interview that he did, the podcast he did with Stephanie McMahon that's now airing everywhere, Styles said himself that, never say never. So maybe he's bullshitting them. I don't know. Me personally, it's hard for me to believe that Styles' career is done after the Gunther match. When Styles had blatantly said that 2026 is his last year competing in the middle of the ring. Well, we just got the start of 2026. We're just now in early February, so you got another 10 months left. So, again, bro, it's still yet to be seen. But at the end of the day, I think Dynamite last night was not a bad episode last night. Obviously, we got storyline progression with this makeshift tournament to crown a new number one contender for the AEW World title. I think Omega and Andrade did a hell of a job last night, and Andrade looks incredible, bro. Ever since he's returned back to AEW, bro, he has been on a mission, and he's had some really good matches with the likes of Swerve Strickland and Kenny Omega. So I can only imagine what this matchup is going to be like at Grand Slam between Andrade and Adam Page to crown a new number one contender for the AEW World title. Like I said, I gave my gripes about Brody King. I do think he's a main eventer. I just don't like the way that they're pushing him so much into this title matchup with MJF, where I feel like he is going to take an L against MJF at Grand Slam. Also, too, the title eliminator matches, I'm not a big fan of, bro. I think that's something where it's complete and utter bullshit from AEW. It's lazy and half-ass booking from AEW. They need to get rid of that concept. We also got Grand Slam coming up, I believe, Valentine's Day weekend. 14th and the 15th. 14th for Dynamite and 15th for the Collision. So I'm looking forward to that as well. I know the time difference is going to be kind of crazy, or it might be taped or a tape delay because they're going to be over in Australia. But I'm also looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a really good show. We also, other sidebar news, we also have a new TNT champion with Tommaso Ciampa. Ciampa ended up facing off against Mark Briscoe on last weekend's Collision, where he was successful in beating Briscoe and now has become the new TNT champion, where he already announced that the TNT title has a new name. It's called Sylvie. Just like he talked about Goldie in his NXT days, I believe he called the TNT title Sylvie. So I thought that was cool, a little nostalgia from Tommaso Ciampa in the glory days that he had under the NXT black and gold banner. So I thought that was cool. But again, hopefully, Tommaso Ciampa can do something with the TNT title. He wants to keep the open challenges going. And like I said before, when I was talking about Ricochet, bro, it's not the title that makes a superstar. It's the superstar that makes the title. And maybe Ciampa being TNT champion can really bring back some limelight to a title at one time, which was the talk of the town at one time for AEW when they first got started. So I look forward to what's going to happen next with Tommaso Ciampa as TNT champion. But like I said, man, at the end of the day, Dynamite was not that bad last night. I like the story progression of where we're going with this makeshift tournament. Now we have Adam Page versus Andrade to crown a new number one contender for the AEW World title. We saw Kenny Omega and Andrade last night in an absolute banger. So I look forward to Grand Slam, and I also look forward to next week's AEW Dynamite episode. But with that being said, though, this is my review of AEW Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, Stay classic. Peace.